Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me comic writer and the founder of HeadlessGnomes.com, LK Ingino. So, welcome to the show.
Hey Andrew, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm excited, and this sort of came all about very last minute, but it's going to be awesome. You currently have a Kickstarter that you're a part of, you have one that's coming up, and you have a bunch of other things that we may or may not be able to talk about. And so, we're going to save that to the end because I'm not too sure what's kosher and what isn't. But the one that's coming up is, I believe, for Not So Fairy Tales and that anthology. But before we get into that, I know this isn't your first anthology. So how did you even get into comics and on Kickstarter and getting to work in them, and how did all that come about?
Sure. So I think I got on Russell Nohelty's list he had a giveaway for Masterclass, and it was like Neil Gaiman's Masterclass, which I did not win, sadly. But so that got me on his list, and added him on Facebook, and then I saw the call out for Cthulhu is Hard to Spell #2, and at that point, I was writing mostly short stories, poetry, which I'm still writing a lot of poetry right now. I haven't had time for short stories because I'm focused on poetry and comics at the moment. And lost my train of thought. So, so I saw his call out, and I was like, I've been thinking of doing a kid's book, but I don't have children myself, and I'm not around them a lot. So it was kind of hard for me to get in the right mindset for that. And so I was like, well, comics, like, I don't know. I mean, I've already been thinking about hiring an illustrator. Maybe that's something I could do. I've dabbled in screenplays, but never actually. I've finished a short. It hasn't been produced, but I've written a short, and that's about as far as I've gotten on a screenplay. So, and comics they're not the same, like, but they do have a similar structure. And I think that first comic I wrote was very much more in a screenplay format. So I've definitely grown since then, and I actually use comics like software now.
So to even talk about this, because going from writing poetry or prose or short stories or other formats, comics are a whole different ballgame for a variety of reasons. Just to give insight, I haven't written one, but I interviewed a lot of people. I've read Denny O'Neil's book, rest in peace, Denny. And you have to give descriptions to your artist. You have to outline dialogue. You have to describe a bunch of stuff so your artist at least has an idea. And it is a whole different writing style, because going to write a screenplay, when you are filming a movie or a TV show or a fan movie or a short, or I don't know what else there is in film per se, but you have other tools that can show things. While in comics, you don't have those tools, but in comics, you have a variety of other tools. And so what was that like for you to shift that? Because the writing that you did previous is not the same as comic writing, and comic writing can be a very steep curve.
Yeah, it's very different. And so initially on that first one, I hadn't done a lot of research on how to write comics. I did a little bit, I think, before actually writing it, because I didn't want to make any major faux pas. So I did do a little bit of research going into it. And you have to really think about what's important. I actually write really short poetry, like sometimes haikus, but usually it's fitting on a page. It's not very long. It's not very verbose. I'm usually trying to edit my words down and keep them what's going to be the most impactful in that story, which I think does help in writing these short comics.
And even to go off of that, because when you're working in an anthology, you can have 2 pages, you can have 8 pages. Sometimes, if you're lucky and you're in the right anthology, you could have 15 pages. And so there is a whole rule set. And so, and even to go further, a lot of anthologies sometimes are only looking for 2 pages, or they're looking for 8 pages, and being able to get a story into those time frames that actually make sense, that is done correctly, that is a full story, and that also fits into the anthology. What is that like? Because that's a tricky thing. It's kind of like fitting a jigsaw puzzle, but you're cutting out the pieces yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so a lot of them will tell you like you can do this much minimum or this much maximum, and I'm trying actually to go on the shorter side now because it's a little bit easier to get in. And then you're working with the theme that the publisher has given you. I'm working on one which was very different from the rest, where we have to the story's kind of continuous, and
I know whose project it is. I know whose project this is.
You know, Project Scissors. I'm talking about, yeah. It's a little bit different. I thought I would have to worry about it more, but I really just have to worry about my character and where they fit. I'm not using
It's a sequel to something, right?
Yeah, it is.
And there might be a third thing that I might pitch to this individual.
I hope so. I'm interested to see more.
So to even talk about that, because obviously, what was it like? Because obviously, you get on Russell's list, and Russell was on this show last year in season 1, and so you get on his list, and then he has his parameters that he set. I think it was almost like a Google Doc, right? That you sort of send your idea to some degree. And I don't want to go into the detail because I don't want to get any of us in trouble. Know that by anybody either. But obviously you submit, and then how does that all work? And then when do you figure out? And then even what did you have to submit or give information to? Because it is tricky, anthologies, because a lot of it is compiling a bunch of stories. You have an editor then picking, and then also it's like, you know, do you go with a 2-pager or do you go with an 8-pager, or do you submit multiples? Because I know people who've done that, and I've heard stories about people purposely only submitting 2 pages because they just want to get in to it. And also you're new to comics as well. And so maybe your bar is lower. Because when I first started interviewing, my bar was significantly lower as an interviewer 7 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
It's still pretty low, though. It's still pretty low. I accept a lot of people on, and in the last 15 months, a lot of people have been on all over the chart. But anyhow, stepping aside from me for a second, what was that entire process, even your mindset in that submission? Because I think that's what people want to know when submitting to anthologies.
And this is some of Russell's advices. He's like, if you're new, submit low. And I got kind of lucky because I did a 6-pager and his max was 8. So I got really lucky on that first one because I was kind of right, not all the way at the top, but definitely not in that bottom half. Lately, my method of like how I'm deciding how many pages is, can I do this in 2 pages? And if not, like how long does this story need to be? You know, can I do it in 4? Can I do it in 6? If I have more than one idea, then I might go with the shorter one. But usually I'll see an anthology, and a lot of them do use Google Forms. So this is kind of similar for a lot of them. It's a similar format. Some will ask for less information and some more. I kind of like it when they want a little bit more. You know, to me, that means that they're a little bit more detail oriented. They're really more invested in this project. And I also think that when you ask for less information, and I haven't been on the end of putting together an anthology yet, that's maybe a couple of years down the road, because that just seems like it's very overwhelming. So if you're just asking for like a little bit of information, I feel like you're going to get tons and tons and tons of submissions. So it's probably a little bit better to ask for more in that regard as a publisher. So circling back around to, I try to keep it on the short side where I can. And also because as a writer, you know, I have to pay my artists. So it's much easier if I can do less pages. If I can make that story work, then I have a better chance of being able to. Because if I've been accepted into 8 right now, and I just can't do anymore. I'm like, I'm tapped out for a while, you know, financially. This is where I'm like, okay, I got to wait. So even if like a really good opportunity comes up, I'm probably going to have to pass right now.
Yeah, to even talk about that, that's one of the things. I'm in a very different subsection in the comic world as a comic book investor. Mm-hmm. And this is a problem, is that I have fiduciary positions, both to fund a variety of different investments in my life, not to mention I got a bigger project that's sort of on the DL right now for a little bit, and I'm hushing about it. And so, like, I haven't gone on vacation in a long time because I have fiduciary responsibilities to other things. On my back end in my life, And in the next, 10 years, what I'm doing is going to pay off as I'm on the investing side of comics. And then I'm an investor in general. I was on a show this morning talking about this. And so I completely understand that position. I think that's something that people don't understand about anthologies and even comics in general, is that it is pricey to produce things. Now, obviously, I don't know the full extent, but if you were at Marvel or DC, it would be extremely more pricey, because that's just how things work in those companies. But even sticking with this story, so how did you go find Abby? Because I think you work with Abby Butler a lot.
Yeah, we're doing 3. Let's see, so we did Cthulhu's Hard Spell 2, and then we are working together on 3 anthologies this year. Trying to think. Neverland, I think, actually finished early April, insofar as the deadlines for art. So that's all done. And then we have 2 more that are coming out. And I found her when I did a call out on Twitter, and that was in response to Russell's post. Because I was like, okay, I have this idea, but now I need to go find an artist. So I posted on Facebook, Twitter.
How does that work? Because I threw out calls on Twitter. I get more response on Facebook. And that can be a very tricky sword, because everybody can jump on it, nobody can jump on it, and it can get really, really complicated. And then also you have to have a vetting process.
Yeah. Now that I've been doing it more, I pretty much just ask on Facebook. Now that I'm in a lot of the comics groups, at that time I didn't really know where to go. So I would definitely advise going on those groups now. But it worked out well in this instance that we connected and found each other on Twitter. So that was very fortuitous. And I was very lucky in that regard. I don't think I got a ton of responses at that time for that one. It was maybe, this was a while ago, I want to say maybe 10 or something. And so I'll look at everybody's art and see, does this style fit? I won't always have like a particular style in mind, but sometimes I do. And it's a mix between style and rate and what I can afford and also how I want it to look. So you have to balance those things. And now if I post in Facebook, it might be like 50 replies. So I just kind of look through everybody's portfolios and say, hold your horses, I'll get back to you.
Well, my favorite website is ArtStation. I love ArtStation. I think ArtStation is the key to everything, and ArtStation has everything. And I mean everything. If you want an Overwatch skin, ArtStation is the way to go. And it's crazy, because a lot of people in comics work in video games, work in a variety of different segments in society, and it's wild who works where and who works for whom. And as an interviewer, it's fantastic in which that it's just awesome, the fact that legitimately people who are coloring comic books have also designed your favorite Overwatch skin, which is insane when you think about how far somebody can go. But even getting into this for a story, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in Cthulhu's Hard to Spell 2, your first story was Home Hunting, the Apocalypse Edition.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
And that's kind of fun, because lucky couples trying to find a house. House might be a good house, might be a bad house. We don't really know exactly what's going on with this house. And where did this idea come from? Because it is fun. It's a short one. It's not like, over the top long. And it's just like a nice little short, self-contained story for the most part.
So I got into a little bit of trouble because I had forgotten that we needed to be PG-13. And initially it was a little bit of a different story that I had to rewrite. But it was kind of a similar thing with a reality show. So I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, I have to rewrite this whole script. I have no idea what to do. And then I'm just like, you know what, let's continue with this reality show thread. And so I was like, okay, we're going to do is it House Hunters? I'm like, now I can't remember what the actual show name is. But anyway.
House Hunters? Remodel this house?
Yeah, I don't know. There's like 20 of them. Whatever one it is. And if you go to like a doctor's office, those are always in the background. But I've never really like sat down to watch one myself. So I had to make myself sit down and watch them, and they are not my thing. But just to get that format, okay. So I really just modeled it off of that format Um, Obviously, I had to really pare it down because you cannot fit an episode of a house hunting show into a 6-page comic the same way that they do it in the show. So it was a little bit, if you took one of those shows and kind of like sped it up, that's kind of what it was like.
And obviously 6 pages is what, maybe like 70 panels at best, if on the high end, and on the low end.
Really high end.
What I mean, what usually there's like what, 6 to 8 panels on a page.
Yeah. Even four is pretty good. I've been trying to really mix it up. I have a couple now. They're like 2 pages. I don't have any splash pages yet, and especially in anthologies, that's not common to really have a splash page. They're just too short for it. So on the low end, I would say I now have 2. I try not to go to 8 though. It can be a lot, even though it's maybe not as uncommon. It can be a lot to fit in there.
Yeah, and obviously the reason why I bring that up is because this is short and everything has to matter. Art has to be, and I don't mean this to be insulting, but art has to be simple, much like the story. You know, you can't go down a rabbit hole and have extensive, things happening, because it is a short story and it has to maintain attention and it has to be self-contained. And the more complicated your writing gets, and the more complicated your art gets, the further you go down a rabbit hole that then detracts away. And so obviously keeping it simple also, I feel like in anthologies is super helpful as well, because, it's 8 pages at the most and then you're on to something else. And it's like I need everything when I read anthologies to be somewhat conformed in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really great practice too, because in a longer comic, you can let some of those things get away from you. But I think it's great practice to do those short things because it really can hone your skills to making sure that when you do your longer comic, like everything really matters. You want somebody to keep turning the page.
Yeah, I'm a long writer. I'm a big series writer. When I write, I like to write in waves. But then again, when I was writing my blog post, it was 500 to 700 words, 3 to 4 paragraphs at the most. And a lot of stuff was tight. And every once in a while, I would do like a 2-page or type thing, maybe 1,000 words. But even still, 1,000 words for a blog post is not a lot, especially if you're actually going into things that are significant. And that's why I was able to write a lot of things very quickly and almost write like 5 posts a week while I was working a 9-to-5 job and interviewing and all sorts of stuff, because when you do write short and you practice, it becomes super, super useful as a skill. It's effective. But then again, I like to write long too. And I like very complicated things down. I've written like a 30-page white paper at the same time on student debt. So
white papers are meant to be a little longer, aren't they?
Oh, I went deep into it.
Okay.
I went deep into it, and my boss was like, "Whoa!" it was a cool piece to hand in. But even going further, because one of the things about Cthulhu is hard to spell, is that a lot of people who were in all different walks in the comic world worked on this. Yeah. Some veterans worked on it. Some people who are sort of in the middle of climbing the ladder, people at the bottom of the ladder, and people who probably are sort of aside to the ladder, or for lack of a better word, worked
not
on.
Really in the main comics world.
That too, some dabbling. And so what was that like? Because anthologies have a lot of advantageous points. And one of it is that you have, 15 to 30 creative teams involved in promoting it. And those people are now not competing with each other because they're pushing their book, their story in the book, but the book's all bound together, if that makes any sense to anybody. And so there's real funding advantageous points. There's real, growth. There's also real opportunity for, a veteran to give an opportunity to a newbie, for lack of a better word, getting noticed. And also it gives opportunity for somebody who has an amazing story to get noticed because now they're associated with something. And so what was that like for you? Because there was a lot of benefits for you to be involved in this story. maybe significantly more than some veterans who were trying to keep their name out there and do something cool and have just a story in between their Kickstarter that was, they did this in month 5 and then the Kickstarter's coming out in month 6.
I think for now, the biggest benefit was getting to connect with everyone. I don't think I got to be Facebook friends with everybody on the anthology, but I did really, connect with a lot of people and make those connections. And so for me, like, it maybe hasn't translated into actual, sales or profit or anything like that at this point, but just getting to like know people in the industry, I mean, that's like, you can't really put like a figure on that.
Do you also feel that it has also just gotten your name and it's your first notch? Because one of the things I was speaking with Lori Foster and we were speaking about this is that sometimes you just need to get your name in there. As an interviewer, sometimes you just need to get your first 20 interviews. It doesn't matter. And you need to just get a big name in there because then you're taken more serious the next person you hit up. I was very lucky that I had some very big names when I first started my other show 7 years ago. And it's given me a lot of credibility. And, I knew the right people and it was very helpful. And nobody was asking the right people either at that time. But all of a sudden, when you have 10 interviews and 4 of them are mainstream comics and are significant mainstream comics, like a Paul Levitz, who was on my other show, gives you a lot of credibility for other things. And so that's how I view some of this as well with you, is that all of a sudden this is your first notch. And now, okay, this person has a project under. Now I'm going to actually say, oh, I recognize the name. And now I'm actually just going to say, okay, what is their idea? Before it's just being thrown away, somebody's actually going to take a look at the idea.
Absolutely, yeah. I haven't really actually name dropped it a lot, but I have a couple times. So I would say it has helped some. For some of the anthologies, it kind of depended if there was a spot where it felt I could do that and not feel like I was just trying to like push it,
Oh, I name drop everything.
But some of them don't really have. It's like, okay, here's your name field, here's your pitch, and that's really it. There's not room for extra information, so I just kind of put it in there.
In forms, I put all the extra information. I will legitimately put, when I'm pitching to be on shows, I legitimately say, here, who's been on my show, and here's whose show I've been on, and I don't really care. It's right in the pitch.
So I should name drop more.
Exactly. Yeah. It's super efficient, actually. And especially when you know the right people, and name dropping can be very, very helpful, especially with the right people. Anybody who knows their salt, and knows their shit, for lack of a better word. I dropped Paul Levitz in a DC conversation with an old-time veteran. It opens up more doors than anything else. I drop different things with certain voice actors, opens up doors that they normally wouldn't say, but they said, I get it. You've done A, B, and C. I need to be on your show because if I'm not, then it's a problem. So super, super helpful. But that's enough of that. That's a whole inside baseball discussion. I'm slowly changing the way you do business. In the middle of an interview. This is how talented I am. Imagine if I had more tools in my toolbox, what we could accomplish, everybody.
Right.
What we could accomplish. But anyway, I want to talk about your other anthology that's currently going on that you're a part of, and that is Tales from Neverland. And this is a bit of a step away from Cthulhu.
Yeah, Neverland, Oz, and Wonderland are like my favorite worlds, I guess, or pre-created like fictional worlds. They were like what I grew up with from childhood. So.
Well, there's one company that does it the best, but I know who is going to be watching it and sending. He's not going to be too happy when I say that. That's something that is a whole different ballgame right there. But anyhow, how did you even get involved in this anthology? Because you have a mermaid type story, and it's a very interesting story that's out there. So how'd you get involved in this?
There was a call out in one of the comic book anthology groups, and so when those come in, I just kind of look through almost all of them, unless I can tell right off the bat that it's just like not my subject matter. And then see, when's the deadline? Because sometimes I'll see some and it's like, deadline's next week. I'm like, okay, that was cool. We don't have time. That's just not enough time. What's the deadline? Is it something interesting? Do I have the budget for it? And then if I don't immediately have an idea, I'll kind of set it aside to see if I'm interested enough, will something come to me? And for Neverland, I really wanted to go with a character that I was like, I don't know, people are going to want to do Peter Pan. They're going to want to do Hook, Smee, all that. And Hook and the Lost Boys are in my story, but I really wanted it focused on the mermaids, on something that, they don't really have a lot of their own stories.
So to even talk about that, because I know very little about the mermaids and Peter Pan. I know about Hook, I know about Peter Pan, I know about the Lost Boys, and I think a lot of people, I know about Wendy. There's been a variety of different interpretations, different stories, different views on all of it. There's been different versions of Peter Pan. And so what even prompted the mermaids? Because I guarantee you that people watching this are like, there's mermaids in Peter Pan. And I know it sounds funny, but it's a legitimate question where I don't know anything about this. I don't even remember any of this. And it's slightly confusing that there's mermaids in Peter Pan, and obviously Hook's in there, and then there's Treasure, obviously, and there's some of the mermaids sort of being bored, but where did all that come from? Because that's something that's very much out of left field, and I think what most people think of with Neverland.
Yeah, it's in the movie they have just like a very small scene or two where they're getting jealous of Wendy. And they're all fawning over Peter, and they love Peter, but they don't want her to have any of his attention. So I just kind of wanted to explore their lives a little bit more. Like, what are they really doing? What do they get up to? What other sort of adventures do they have? And being mermaids, they can't go on land, or they're not flying, so they don't get to experience all of Neverland the way everybody else does. So they're kind of confined to certain areas.
And they're very mischievous.
Yes.
And it's very interesting in that regard, and obviously getting that, and they're sort of baiting Hook a little bit, and they're sort of teasing the Lost Boys a little bit, and obviously there's the crocodile that's sort of involved in this all too, and they may or may not get somewhat what they deserve a little bit in this story. So because it's a playful story in many ways.
Yeah.
Where it's not intense, it's very playful, and it's kind of just fun, and it's I find less intense than Cthulhu is hard to spell too, and I find this just more in line with Disney, if that makes any sense.
As much as we want to still stay not Disney, but yes, more in that fun vein.
Yeah, more to the degree, maybe Disney's not the right word, maybe more to the degree that this book doesn't take itself too seriously, or your story doesn't.
Right, yeah, I would, and I haven't had a chance to read the other stories, so I can't speak to I have a feeling they're probably all over, the gamut from serious to humorous. Let's go, some of that. So yeah, this is a very fun story. It's a little bit more for me, more in the fantasy realm than it is in the horror realm, where obviously Cthulhu. I don't want to say that you can't have a Cthulhu story that has no horror, because I feel like there was one or two that really didn't have that feeling at all. And even like the Home Hunting Apocalypse Edition story was primarily humor, but it ended it not well.
Yeah.
That horror element.
Cthulhu obviously has more of a dark overtone to it.
Yeah, exactly.
By nature, Russell in Cthulhu Invades Oz wrote a very not horror story of Cthulhu, and that I guess comic ended the entire thing. I think Travis started that, so that's Travis Gibb. This entire project, Cthulhu Invades Oz, and it's a fascinating. And I don't know if there's any books left on that. You can get it digitally. It is a super limited print run, a graphic novel. It is not a comic. I don't know if you can get it. There might be some on eBay. It's one of those cool.
He had it on Indiegogo, I think. After the
yeah, he had some, but I know that
they might have sold out.
I'm not too sure if they're still up there or if he took them down. We were speaking about this, and it's slipping my mind, so I'm sure he's going to yell at me at some point when he sees this, just like everybody else. But he'll come back on the show, which is nice for either the second or third time. But it's very interesting but Cthulhu definitely has a dark overtone to it, and even the story that Russell wrote, it's very, very Scotty Young, cartoonish, bright colors that has a very dark tone to it. And so this, on the other hand, has more of a light, playful touch to it, and you feel like you're actually in Neverland versus saying, somewhere else.
Right, yeah.
It's a nice touch to actually be able to play into the world that you're in.
Yeah, and I would agree. It's more, we'll go with Disney-ish because,
And then yeah. And obviously I don't want to go too much further into this per se, but obviously this entire Kickstarter, which is funded from my understanding, and now you're just reaching stretch goals and all the money goes into making
stretch goals.
And then every dollar now goes into making the book better, obviously getting people taken care of and all that stuff with anthologies. Obviously, if there's sometimes money gets kicked into the next anthology. But this is a very different anthology because this is not as, in my opinion, I say this not to be disrespectful, but not as large as Cthulhu is hard to spell. And two, and there's less stories in here, and there's more of a centerpiece on the creators, I feel, where there's less just creative teams in general in this book. And I think there's more of a spotlight on you. So what is that like? Because I feel that every creator in this book in particular is getting a little bit more of a spotlight because there's just less noise going on. Not saying there's anything wrong with having a big anthology book, but when you have 60 people involved in a book versus having 30 people involved in a book, people get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, this one I think it did come together a little bit quicker.
But less chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. And I want to say I think our timeline was a little bit shorter too, but it's also black and white, so you cut out the time needed for color.
That helps because that also helps a lot of things.
Black with the printing and
is a whole different ball game where coloring, printing costs, how to get things over, because even taking the cost aside, coloring could take 2 days to do for somebody who's very efficient, or a week technically. And I mean, we're talking about 8 pages, but it's also when you have a coloring for those who don't know, you have to, I don't know the correct term for it, but it's like you got to block out the color. It's matting.
Flatters do.
Yeah, flatters.
Flatting. Yeah.
And so sometimes people don't know how to do that, and you got to bring somebody in. And flatting could be, $15 to $20 a page, but it's still an expense. I actually got solicited by a flatter, which is crazy because I'm not an artist or a writer. I'm an interviewer, which means the person didn't do their homework on who I am. It's a big issue. But I think it's funny because I have that sense of humor. You probably, and this goes out to every flatter, don't bother me unless you want to be interviewed and make it explicitly clear, and don't send me your page rates because that just makes absolutely no sense. But even that, because the flatter is going to take a day, and then the colors is going to take 2 days, and that delays the book. And then you have 7 stories, not everybody's going to be doing it all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a big time issue, not to mention that I don't know how much colorists charge per page, but everybody differs. But, it's probably an added at least $500 expense for the 8 pages, give or take. I mean,
probably a little less, but yeah, it's an extra expense for sure.
Maybe a
little less.
But my point is that when you go black and white, you don't have to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it makes a huge difference, and that's why black and white comics exist. And then on top of that, also, you have a slave driver, Chuck Peanut. I can say that because he's coming on, and he's been on twice, and he knows I'm joking when I say it. But Chuck does a lot of editing, for those who don't know. And obviously, I'm joking around when I mention Chuck. So what is that like to actually have an experienced editor working on this book and helping put it together? Because it does make a difference as well.
It does, yeah. And he's working on my stories in particular. I don't think he wasn't working on other stuff in the book unless I'm unaware, and he was working with someone else too. But he's been working on since after the first Cthulhu. I've just like, all right, Chuck, you're looking at everything, because I got accepted into like, I don't know, 2-3 anthologies that he had edited. I was like, okay, Chuck, you're my lucky charm, so.
So to even talk about that, because there's a whole discussion with him and a few other people about editing. And I've had editors look at things, not comic related, but when I was in college, I wrote a 30-page thesis. I had, an editor look at it, and I paid somebody.
Wow.
And their job was to make it sound better, help with grammar, and then do the whole works. And actually, but their job wasn't to, change my opinion or change what I wrote. Right. Their job was to make it sound better or make it sense. And I purposely hired an editor who disagreed with my entire thesis for that very reason. So I thought it was funny to some degree, and I also we were going to do a better job.
Yeah.
So when you have your editor and hire an editor, what is their role in your book? Because it is complicated. Somebody say, look, I don't really care what you think about the story. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing something. Or I want to know what your opinion is on the story. Make sure that the script makes sense. Make sure that an artist is going to understand it enough that they could go off of something. And, if you spot any major flaws in this, let me know now, because there's all sorts of different editing, because that people need. Somebody might say, I'm a great speller. I don't need you to worry about spelling. I need you to make sure this legitly has a good start point. The middle makes sense, and I'm not skipping 2 pages to get to the end. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is how do you work with editing? Because it's a fascinating topic.
So I know not everyone does an outline, but Chuck is with me on this, that I do outlines for pretty much all my comics. I don't know if I did one for a 2-pager I'm working on.
What is an outline for you? Because this is a good question, because what is an outline versus script? Because if I'm to write a comic, I'm writing a script to give to my artist. My script is going to have notes. It's going to have a variety of research. I'm not going to just hand my artist something and be like, here's my script, good luck. But I'm actually going to write out like what is supposed to happen. They're going to have 28 pages or 22 pages of where they need to go, and they're actually going to read it before they start drawing.
So I do an outline before I do the script. We do then do the full script. We're not skipping that step.
Because everybody works differently, and that's why I'm curious about this, because I think it's fascinating how people work.
It's not real. It's kind of like a bullet list, except I don't bullet it. So, but it's kind of just like, okay, this is what's happening in the beginning.
Because the other thing is that that's not a Bible, and I don't mean the biblical book.
No,
A Bible. So I'll give an example. Tyrone Johnson or Jackson, I forget which his last name. He creates the Soulverse universe. His entire thing is that he has, I think, 7 or 8 series that are being developed, and he's probably going to add another 4. He has a Bible on how all of this works together and how it's supposed to work. That doesn't mean he has a script. So that's a whole different concept. When you have a universe, you have a Bible and you have rules. So in your world building, it's so interesting how that works, because that's not an outline. That's a Bible, and those are the rules. And Thomas Johnson has a Bible and a rule set and where things are supposed to be, and almost an entire, design catalog. And you can't have, person A shoot a gun because they don't have an arm. that's in your Bible, or if you're dealing with multiple planets, you can't just have somebody come in from planet A that's 900 million light years away in 3 issues, or they can't be in panel 1 on their planet and then 3 panels later they're on this planet. But sorry to digress. So like you create an outline, which is bullet points, and then you build your full script.
Yeah, and then I build the full script. So I'll usually look at it with Chuck and be like, hey, does this like make sense? And then go to script from there, because it gives us a starting point. And then I don't have to completely rewrite the script if we know right off the bat that something's like not going to work, then it makes it a little bit easier when I'm going to script. Which is not to say that I'm not moving stuff around in the script phase or cutting stuff or occasionally adding stuff, but it's usually more cutting. And then when we go to script, we're looking a lot at page turns is like the big one. Panels and page turns. Like we're working on my single issue comic, which will hopefully be out in November. We'll see. That's the goal. And I'd have like, you're trying to avoid like having 4 or 5 pages in a row where it's like six panels, 6 panels, 6 panels, 6 panels, and just, so he'll help me keep an eye on that and make sure I'm varying it up more so it has more interest.
Right. So yeah. So there's a lot of stuff, and obviously writing 22 pages or 40 pages is a very different art than writing pages.
Yeah.
Especially in an anthology where you have to grab attention, and they're different writing styles. So obviously, I want to stick on this one for a second here. There are a few other things. Obviously, there's a bunch of rewards that are going on right now, and so I got pictures to show because I like pictures. So this is the cover by Moog Park, and I think this is cover B. And then obviously that's the physical issue, and then this is by Greg Bow, and this is cover A. And so obviously, what is that like to have because I think this is in graphic novel format versus in comic format.
Yeah.
Which is nice because it actually is, a little bit sturdier. It's meant to be more read. It's not. I come from the world of comic collecting and variant collecting, and so I come from the world where I do not read comics. I legitimately stare at them and I get them graded, and then I sell them. This is meant to be read, which I think is nice with anthologies where they're meant to be read. So what is it like though to have 2 covers that people can choose and 2 different artists with your project? Because it is cool to have that.
Yeah, as a consumer, I like having those choices too. And it was hard for me, even though, a lot of anthologies will send you a copy, not all of them, but a lot of them. I still like to try to back the Kickstarter just because it helps, helps get that momentum going, showing that support. So, but I had to make my own decision, and I was kind of like, oh man, I want both, but I know I'll probably get them later. So,
and then even to go further, because one of the nice things about this Kickstarter is that while you have a choice of both covers, you could one or other, or you can get both. Yeah. One of the things is that it's a very simple Kickstarter. You have 3 options, and there's no other like major goodies. There's no being the next thing because it's obviously a one-off. There's no signing or anything like that, and nothing is too crazy with it. And it's not all that expensive to get both. Obviously, it's $25 for either or cover, which is also nice, meaning that like it's not $30 for cover B. So that's kind of nice also where, if you're just interested in reading this anthology, you don't feel that you're being price gouged out. And
I feel like it's a very fair book price for sure.
And I also like the fact that both covers are the same price. So, and I don't like when it's like, I understand a variant, I understand that, but I have had anthologies where cover A is priced this and cover B is priced this and cover C is priced that, and it's the same thing, it's the same soft cover, and it's just like at a certain point, it's a turnoff for me as a Kickstarter backer. And so I like that, and I like the fact that people do have some choice, but you also have limited choice with this. So that's kind of where it is, and I wanted to show both of those things so that people who are watching this and see this understand that, hey, you can go one or two directions. And
And I
then,
think unless you have like a big name DC or Marvel artist, it's like, charging $10, $15 more per cover. I mean, people have to really, really, really want it.
it happens. It happens, and even without those names, it happens, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It really is, and it's not good. And I've seen people that have not that charge reasonable positions for covers that are not DC Marvel and to work for them, and it's great. It's fantastic, and they're the big artists. I know that Don Matee, Elias Chazudis on Kickstarter, it's like $20 for their variant, which is reasonable because it's in line with what they normally charge for other companies and their variants on Kickstarter, which is more than fair. So keep that in mind, everybody. And then obviously I do want to talk about the other stuff. I don't know how much we could talk about. I know that we could talk about Not So Fairy Tales.
Yeah, Not So Fair Tales.
Not So Fair Tales.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I tend to do this. It's really quickly, though, because we all know what it's about, though.
Right.
See, this is what happens. Your mind then jumps, and then it just puts the Y in there automatically. Or at least mine does. I'm sure I'm not the first person who was referring to it, but this is cool because it's a 172-page hardcover book. Obviously, it's focusing on fairy tales. There's a lesson in there somewhere. It's got a classic fairy tale thing, and might be slight twists to them, and there might not be happy endings to some of them, but obviously there is this focus that a lesson in a lot of them, and it's a learned lesson. And so this is cool, and I know this is launching, I think, on May 31st.
Yes. So a little bit over a month from now.
And so a lot of cool stuff going on. Obviously, what can people expect with the stories? What can people expect with the art? Obviously, this is a bookshelf book versus something else. It's the type of book that should be on a bookshelf. I don't know if people know what exactly that means. The way I define that is that it's going to look really nice on your bookshelf. So, and also I know that people can get 40 pages for free if they sign up for the email list.
I haven't gone through the full preview myself yet, but I've seen a lot of the various pieces as they've been coming out, and the art is it's so much fun. There are so many great teams in this one, and I like and dislike that it's a unique size, so it's like almost a square. I think it's really cool to have something in a different format, but then I'm going to have my graphic novels go on the shelf.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that because I'm curious because books can be weird. So I don't know if you know the book Polar. Polar is a weird book on how it's read. It's almost like a flip movie book type thing where it's definitely square and it's rectangular. At least one of them or two of them are, and then maybe some of them go back to normal. And I've seen also books, and I think Russell did a square book at one point.
Yeah, he did. I have that one, yeah.
And it's weird. And I'm not bashing anybody on this point, but it's a weird thing, and it's definitely weird to look at. It's especially if you have, bookshelves. I used to have a lot of bookshelves. If you go back on YouTube with me, you'll see my background used to be a lot of manga books and a whole graphic novel wall. And it is weird when you have an outlier. And so what is that like? Because it's cool at the same time, but it's just fascinating. And that's something I think that people should know about, where it's just like, oh, okay, this is going to be square and it's not going to be the rectangular, and on your bookshelf it's going to look a little weird.
Honestly, as much as I like that uniformity, I have enough outliers now that it's kind of like, well, oh well, they're not going to be all the same height or the same depth or... Yeah. I have a lot of poetry books too, and poetry books are the worst for uniformity. Other than most of them are small, I would say that's like the common thing, is that they're mostly small. But aside from that, they're tall, they're wide, they're short, they're all over the place.
I like my books nice and uniform. I like hardcover books too. I love hardcover books. I appreciate it. I love it, and it's just how I do things. So I have a particular set of books that I enjoy, and I can't wait to put my bookshelf back up. It's going to be beautiful.
I would
But
say as a rule, like the biggest thing is that don't make, like if you have a series, don't make those different sizes. Like at least make your series fit together and look good together.
yeah, they should all be the same book. I don't think you would mind if certain thickness changes a little bit, and
Oh yeah, thickness is fine, but height, depth, ideally.
unless there's a reason why you're doing that, and every once in a while there is. I have to let Airbender do that. Anyway,
I don't know if I've seen it, but that doesn't mean
they didn't. I think they didn't publish one book in hardcover purposely,
Oh.
just to be those guys. To be those guys. But anyway, I digress because there's a bunch of stuff, and obviously this is launching on May 31st. I don't know what the rewards are going to be for this. Obviously, I think getting the standard edition. I'm not too sure if there's going to be another edition. There might be some other things that get thrown in there. Obviously, this is a much bigger anthology project.
Yeah.
I think your goal is 12,000. So it's a much higher goal, and there's other things going on with it. And obviously, I think there's going to be a higher quality paper attached to it. And obviously, it's a hardcover book. I don't think this is going to be done in soft cover, from my understanding.
I don't think so. I don't. Yeah.
So obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with this book, and obviously, I mean, we're about a month out, so things can change, and I don't want to push too hard on it because again, I don't know what you can and can't say.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've seen the preview page, and I'm like, I don't know what I can. So. It looks good though. It looks like I'm like, oh, I kind of want to get all these, but I don't. I got to hold myself back from, backing everything and getting all the tiers.
It's a problem in which that I'm now starting to back off, and I'm going to be backing off for about 2 months on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Because I've backed a lot of projects in the last first 4 months of 2021, and I got to back off where things add up really quickly.
Yes, they do. I actually had 2 whole weeks where I think I had nothing in my backlist. Like wow, this is the first time I haven't had anything there for a while.
There's a bunch of stuff that I'm just passing on because it's not that it's not good, it's that I legitimately just can't touch it, and I have enough things to worry about monetarily wise, and that's a thing that's unfortunately going on. And I do want to talk, and we might as well touch upon that at the moment because obviously Kickstarter has gotten very interesting in the last 3 years. In the last 15 months, Kickstarter's become beyond fascinating with what's going on. Obviously, big names have come into Kickstarter. More projects have come into Kickstarter. Apparently, Tom Hutchinson from Big Dog Inc. corrected me on this, where there were more projects in certain points in 2020, and there was more funding, and the success rate and the funding rate was higher back when there was more projects. And now that there's less projects, the funding rate is lower than it was back then, which technically makes no economic sense.
Which could have to do with the eyes on the page, maybe?
I'm not too sure, but economically, I don't think it should make any sense.
Right.
And because my theory on Kickstarter, and I don't really know the answer, and my theory could be wrong, is that if there were more projects on it in the middle of a pandemic, when people have less money or money's tighter or more Americans are saving money and more Americans are servicing debt, then Kickstarter funding with more projects would fail. That's my argument. That's my thesis. Apparently, the data has not stated that.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting, that evolution. Obviously, more big names have come into Kickstarter. And even where do you see all that, and where are you on that? Because you're now a part of Kickstarter, and you are obviously are involved in 2 projects so far. And a third one's coming, and I know you have a few more, and I know a few of them that are out there that are going to be occurring. So where do you even all see Kickstarter going? Because it's a very interesting place to be. And I don't know if it's a bubble. I don't know what it is, but obviously it's gone through a massive change in the last 15 months and the last 3 years on top of that.
Well, this year, all things going well, will be my first actually doing like my own Kickstarter, so I haven't had that experience yet where I've had to run one.
but even
I
being part of it and being subjected to it and seeing
yeah.
it and also seeing the massive changes because whether you're running it or you're a part of it, it affects things. And obviously, and I know you're new, that's why I'm curious about this because there have been people who've run like 40 of these and have been doing it for the last 10 years and they view things differently than the people who are just involved in their first few. And I view it differently as a backer and as somebody who interviews all these people. And, last year I did 90 people and a good chunk of them were from Kickstarter. And this year I'm doing 150 and a bunch of people who I'm speaking to are either Indiegogo or Kickstarter. So obviously I have a viewpoint looking in with a little bit more knowledge than the average consumer.
Yeah, I definitely don't see it as like a zero-sum game. I think you were talking probably about Keanu Reeves' book.
That Scott
Yeah.
Snyder, Charles Soule's book, Todd McFarlane. I mean, it's not boom. I mean, Power Rangers did
Right.
like a lot of money. It's
Okay,
not
I
just
didn't see that one.
it's not just though Keanu Reeves' book. Look,
Yeah.
Marvel has a game that they teamed up with somebody that's almost at $1 million plus, and it's comic related. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not just Keanu Reeves, 1.4 million. It's a lot of people stuff. Jeff Lemire is on Kickstarter. And I'm not saying they don't belong, but there's a whole discussion of, where is this even going? What does the future look like? And I'm curious because I don't have a project on Kickstarter. And so I can only comment on what I think and what I perceive in economics and as an investor of comic books and buying and flipping and selling. I have a very different opinion than everybody who's running a Kickstarter because I have a business position on it.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I back Kickstarters, I have business positions on things like that. And it's a whole different ballgame. So I view this very differently than everybody else does, who I speak to. So I'm curious where you even think all this is going, because it's a fascinating position.
I mean, I think it is good to get more eyes, people who haven't been on Kickstarter over to Kickstarter. Um, I mean, and while I say it's not like a zero-sum game and, everybody has their spot, there is some base level of, like we were talking about, backing off on backing stuff, where sometimes people just aren't going to have, even if they want to back your stuff, they're not going to be able to. So there's always that in the background. But aside from that, I think if you're putting out a good project, um, the more people coming to Kickstarter to see it, the better. So if these names are getting people on Kickstarter, that's I think it's generally more of a good thing than a bad thing, without having the numbers to support that.
Yeah, I mean, even AEW is on Kickstarter with Butts and Seats, which is Dirk Manning's project, and with Tony, I can't say his last name, so I'm not even going to try. But it's a super interesting sector, and I mean, I view crowdfunding. That crowdfunding is getting very, very interesting, and I don't, and obviously it's just super interesting what's coming out there, and also that I feel, and I don't know how you feel about it, because obviously you back things and I back things, and you're a creator as well, and I'm on the investing side, of this entire trade per se, where I love competition. I find that there's a lot of better projects. There's a reason why I have to back off because I've backed a lot of really good projects.
Yeah.
You have to back off now because I am legitimately, my goal was to spend maybe $80 a month. And in the first 4 months of 2021, I spent like $700 on Kickstarter. And it's a real issue. I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration. I probably spent about $500 in the first 4 months. It's a real problem because there's a lot of good stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I have to back this thing. I got to back this thing. I got to back this thing. If I don't back this thing, I know I'm missing it, and I'm missing like the book of the year, and so I am now backing off a little bit, and even though I'm backing off, there's still things that I want that I know that I'm missing.
Yeah.
And it just can't be financed, and so like that I think that's the biggest problem right now is that there's too much, or everything is coming out at the exact same time. That's a problem. So that's how I.
And I don't really see that I don't really see it dying down though.
I don't see it dying down in the next 18 months. I think in the next 18 months it's going to die down for a very different reason.
We have a little Kickstarter bubble.
I think what's going to happen, and it's a very negative thought, and a bunch of people are going to not like what I'm about to say, but I have a feeling in 2023 we are going to be in very much a recession, and I think money is going to be tighter. And statistically, there's a lot of reasons why I think that. A lot of top analysts on economics are saying it. Again, I'm taking an investor position on it versus a creator's position.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a problem. I don't think it's coming for another 18 to 24 months at the latest, but 2023 is going to be, I think, when some of this stuff dies down, because I think money's going to get a lot tighter for people, and I think people's projects are going to also have issues. And then on top of that, I also think that people are funding, but I don't know how much they're overfunding as well, and that's a whole different ballgame with Kickstarter as well, because you could fund this project, not I'm making sure I get the name right, Not So Fair Tales.
Mm-hmm.
It's 12,000. If you guys fund at 20, that's amazing. But if you only fund at 13,000, that's not. You fund the book, but
Right.
at a different time, because that's also happened in 2020 with people's books, is that they met their deadlines, but they only did $1,000 over, where the year prior, and they did like another book in the series, they did 5,000 over. So it's getting very interesting, and obviously that kind of leads me into COVID and talking about cons and all, because I think that's had an effect on this as well, both positive and negative. And so I don't know how many cons you've been to and anything in that realm, but
not as somebody with a table, only as an attendee.
So this is super interesting. So I'm a fan panelist. I don't get paid. I just present my panel. I get a free ticket.
Nice.
I'm broke, and I found out how to get in for free. So what do you think cons have to do to come back? Because beyond vaccination of everybody, and also sort of gain the trust back of people, because I think people are starving for content and wanting to be back and socialize, but also it has to be done safely. It has to be done responsibly. You can't have everybody back in and everybody gets sick. And take on COVID for a second, if somebody has the flu, con crud is real. If you go to a con on Friday, you're feeling okay on Friday, feeling a little woozy on Saturday, you're driving home on Sunday, and you're sick on Monday, pretty much that's because of the con.
Yeah.
So what do you think cons have to do, and where do you even think they're going to be going with this? Because we're not going backwards with this. Hopefully we're not.
I don't know. It's a hard one, because I've been having a really hard time picturing in my head them looking differently than they did before. Like it's hard for me to visualize, and it's kind of sad, But but the reality is that I also don't really see myself going until 2022.
Yeah, I'm not going to a con until 2022. I have no desire to go, and summer 2022.
I'm going to a concert in October, and that's like the first big thing I'm going to. So I'm like, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't even know if it's like going to be all the way full or not.
I went to the movies for the first time last night in over a year.
Yeah.
And it was very, very interesting. It's
Did they have the seats where it was like every 2 seats were blocked off?
They didn't do that.
Okay. Ours is doing that, but we couldn't get tickets.
It was cashless, no cash.
Mm-hmm.
I was joking with my friends about it. So you can't pay with cash. You have to pay with your debit card, your credit card, which is a whole different ball game now. Also at cons, because I hate to say this, but I like paying with cash. I have an entire philosophy that I like to pay with cash because I don't want a bill coming back to me in 2 weeks after the convention.
Yeah, if it doesn't process right away, I hate when it doesn't process right away.
And because statistically, you actually spend about 11% more on your debit card when you start your debit card, because it doesn't register, it doesn't cause you a reaction of you actually giving something up and sacrifice. On your credit card, you spend anywhere from 17 to 21% more. So when you go to a con, the two worst enemies, there's 3 enemies at a convention: the ATM machine, your debit card
Oh,
and your
gosh,
credit
yeah.
card. If you take away my ability to use cash at a con, I am going to be upset because you are legitimately costing me 11% more to 21% more.
Yeah. Well,
That,
and you have some vendors will have the fees for the debit credit cards too.
and also if you're now a seller, if you make me pay the fee, I'm going to be furious because I'm going to negotiate that down. That's coming out automatically on my end, where I'm going to not be happy. And then secondly, now if you have to process a credit card thing, I mean, it's going to affect prices, especially on items that are like $1,000 items, which get sold at cons every second. You know, and if you don't think they do, it becomes very, very expensive because it's like $30. It's 3%. It's a lot of money, and so it's a clusterfuck, and not to mention the elements of cosplay, not to mention attendance, not to mention panels. I mean, I speak and I have 200 people in my room. You take that down to half, I'm not going to be happy because I'm trying to grow my brand. You legitimately just cost me money, so I'm not interested now. Celebrities, whole bunch of stuff. So.
Do you think they can do temperature checks quickly? So I've been thinking of doing temperature checks through the check-in, and check-in sometimes registration feels like feels slow already.
Oh, I'll tell a quick story about Anime Boston. Anime Boston, they had a Pokemon tournament. Didn't go to the Pokemon tournament. It's relevant. Basically, these two groups got into a scuffle, and one of the groups drove 9 hours and got a bunch of guns, and we're going to bring it in to the con to sort of start something. And I guess, I don't know where it was going. It was stopped. Now, as a response in the Heinz Center, because of that circumstance, they now need to put everybody through a metal detector for Anime Boston. Now, Anime Boston, they didn't have the problem, but at that convention, everybody goes through a metal detector.
Yeah.
Everybody gets like their bags searched. At Anime NYC, everybody gets their bags searched.
I don't think I've been to one here that didn't have a bag search. I don't think we had metal detectors. Maybe we did.
My point is that if you have temperature checks now, I mean, to go through that metal detector, it took like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Everybody on that first day, and what a nightmare! What a pain in the ass! And it's annoying, and it's difficult, and it delays things, and it's invasive, and it's really a time issue. And so there you go. That's a problem with all this thing. Temperature checks are going to be a nightmare. I know they're going to be a nightmare. It's going to be bad, and God help us all. But that's a whole another hour. We can talk about cons and how they're going to be playing out. But it's a mess.
I'm in Palm Springs, California, so it gets. We had our convention. They didn't have it before COVID. They stopped it, so I don't know if a new one's going to pop up. But they had it in August, which is still really hot here, like over 100 degrees. So just being outside in that, you like kind of run a little bit hotter automatically. So temperature check at 100 degrees.
I think all these cons are saying they're running in August. They're running in September. They're running in October. I got a feeling that a bunch of them are going to cancel because even though vaccinations are rolling out,
it's not fast enough.
It's not fast enough, and also I don't think it's safe yet. I don't think it's safe, and I understand you have to live your life, and I'm all for it, and everybody should do what they want to do. But I don't think there's going to be the money there. I don't think that the turnout, and I don't think these cons are going to break even. On some of these cons are going to go broke, and they're going to lose money because I think it's going to be a massive problem. I think that they're going to have less people coming. I think they're going to have less vendors. And I think it's going to be a very interesting experiment. Like AwesomeCon, which is in DC, is running in August. And my response to AwesomeCon, I used to live in DC. I live in Connecticut now. My response to AwesomeCon is good luck, because I think you're going to have half your attendance, maybe 60%. But all of a sudden, for a con to be profitable, you need to have a certain number of people to make it profitable for all the parties involved.
Yeah.
And you as the con might break even, but if your vendors aren't breaking even, your celebrities aren't breaking even, your artists that you involved or paid for a table aren't breaking even, God help you, because they're not coming back the next year.
Yeah.
So having tabled that, I don't know what else we could talk about, because I know you have that sequel book coming out. I don't know if you could say what it is. I know that you have Cthulhu is Hard to Spell 3. I think I could say that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think that's been publicly announced on Facebook. So
I know that other book sort of has been spoiled, and I know that
right.
Travis's project isn't gonna get you or me in trouble per se. I know it's sort of a secret, but it's sort of not. So I don't know if you want to talk about it, you want to risk it. I don't know.
I sent him a message. He didn't get back to me.
But obviously that's going to be an interesting book that's coming in, and he's doing some interesting stuff. So if you just type in Travis Gibb, I'm sure that people can figure it out.
Yeah,
it's Cthulhu related. Yeah. I think that's a pretty safe way to put it.
Not to say that he's ignoring me. I'm sure he's just busy.
No, he's probably
as
just
everybody is. Yeah.
He's just ignoring. I know it.
Aww.
I used to say, Travis, if you don't answer me, and I put something explicit in there. Gets back really quick. He knows I'm joking when I say this too, which makes this even funnier.
Since 2020, it's just, and I'm bad at replying to people myself sometimes too. So I'm just, until it gets to be like 4 days or something, I'm like, all right, they're just busy.
Well, I just ignore problems until they become bigger problems. But that's just me. So I don't know. Obviously, those two things. So and there's nothing to talk about because I don't want to get you or me in trouble. And then you got a bunch of other anthologies coming up.
They haven't really been announced as far as I know. So.
So, and then obviously let's talk about your website, because your website's interesting. There's a lot of information up there.
I need to it's a little bit not up to date just yet. A little behind.
And so obviously it's, I believe, headlessgnomes.com.
Yeah.
And so obviously that has a lot of social links in there. And so I'm going to give you an opportunity to self-promote yourself, because a bunch of the stuff that we're talking about that we sort of can and can't talk about will be put out on social media.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? So obviously check out the website. What's your Twitter handle, your Facebook handle, Facebook page, Instagram, the TikTok, all that fun stuff.
I finally joined TikTok, but just to watch stuff for now. I'm like,
gotta get in on the TikTok.
Huh?
Gotta get in on the TikTok game.
Okay.
TikTok star, get into the mansion, run with it. I'm a TikTok celebrity. They're all doing fantastic. Their lives are just amazing. They're all happy. They're all doing great. God help them all.
Okay, so Facebook is Headless Gnomes and Instagram too, but I'm most active for my Twitter, even though I have Headless Gnomes Twitter, I'm most active on L Thinks Thoughts, which was shortened for Leanne Thinks Thoughts because, you can only have it like so long. So it's L Thinks Thoughts. And then my personal Instagram, Leanne Thinks Thoughts. So I'm a little bit more active on those two, but on Facebook, Headless Gnomes is probably my most active one. So I know it's not great for branding.
Yeah, and then obviously you're going to be updating your website and all that stuff that you just mentioned on Twitter and Facebook. Obviously, as you can announce these things, I'm sure that you're going to put links up to it. You're going to put links up to the Kickstarter. Obviously, the Neverland Kickstarter is currently going on May 31st. Be on the lookout for that Kickstarter. Whose name?
Lots of fairy tales and May 31st, and Neverland is. We got like 4 or 5 days left. It's a short campaign. It's like
So whose name is that under? And the reason why I asked that question, if you know it, is that it's a really quick way how to look it up. Is that you can get Kickstarter names super efficiently.
Yeah,
Neverland. That one's currently going on.
Yeah, Dren Publications is the so James Mashia, I'm sure I'm butchering that, is the publisher, but Dren Productions LLC is the Kickstarter account that it's under.
And also, it's in the link up above for those who are needing to check it out. That obviously you could click that link, whether you're clicking it on YouTube or Facebook. Obviously, that's a place, as well as your website's up there. And on that note, as I've been saying, you have to support indie. And typically what that means is you have to wind up backing Kickstarters, picking up issues of people. that you like and you enjoy their work, it goes a long way. Obviously, a lot of these people are not associated with big publishers. And so when you actually back their project, it A, helps to get their project funded, helps to pay the art back or the writer back or even the binding or the printing of the book. And obviously you're getting the book. And so if you like what you see or you find anything interesting, you should back it. Or, let's say that with a publisher who has a few other stories out there, let's say you don't like their Kickstarter, but you like another thing that we spoke about, you should go to their shop and pick up that issue. That also is significant. And you don't have to back every single Kickstarter. It is not your taste, but if something they do is your taste, you should obviously pick that up. And it goes a long way in that realm. And I get it right now. COVID's tough. People have been out of work. People are saving money. More Americans in the last year have saved more money, and the saving rates have gone up significantly. A lot of people are using their stimulus check to pay down debt. Please continue to do that. Also, please make sure that your house is paid for the next month, your rent paid for, your water, your electricity, your food. If you've got a wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, make sure they're good. If you got kids, make sure your kids are good. It's super important to make sure your kids are good, make sure your dog's good, your cat's good, your goldfish, ask your goldfish how it's doing. You never know, it might respond.
It might give you a bubble.
Yeah. It might just say hello to you, goldfish, the snack that smiles back. Anyway, on that note, please take care of yourself first and foremost before you go back to people's Kickstarters. Because times, while things I think are moving forward and things are getting better, it is a long road out of hell. And I think we are just in the infancies of getting things back, and it is going to take a while. So please make sure you're financially stable. And if that's the case, follow on Twitter, follow on Facebook, follow on Instagram, share on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, because while you might not be able to afford it, it is super important that somebody may say, this is an awesome project, I want to check it out. It actually happened on Wednesday night because I was doing an interview. Somebody said, oh man, thank you, Andrew, for actually doing this interview, because now this project looks awesome. And so that person wouldn't have gotten another backer if it wasn't for an interview live while we were doing the interview. And so super, super helpful. And that's just me doing an interview. Imagine if a bunch of people shared it to all their friends, and all of a sudden, would have driven a lot of traffic. So please keep that in mind. And it's super important to share Kickstarters, comment, engage, like people's page, follow them on Twitter, and all of it's free. So on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, final word. All right.
It could be multiple words too.
Not just one. Okay. Well, I was just saying, on the website, I am going to have a 4-page comic in the next month and a half or so available for download. So check that out. And yeah. So I call everybody on my newsletters called Nomies. So I always say, have an awesome weekend, Nomies.
Couldn't have said it any better myself.